Hey, Sean.
What's up, Alon? How are you doing?
Dude, ask me knock knock.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Oh,
Gotcha.
Oh!
Welcome to another Dev Talk episode. We talk to the game devs about the process of making and creating and designing their games. Some admin stuff quickly. So I got you bad, dude. I got you. Some admin stuff. Subscribe to the Patreon at patreon.com/wideflank. Join the Discord. Vote on what the next game club game's gonna be. There's a neck and neck race between Wave Race 64 and Bayonetta going on right now, with some other votes scattered around.
Hey.
Green parties stealing votes from the main games.
I insist on including Wario Land 4. Alon's trying to say nobody wants to vote for Wario Land 4.
It's getting votes.
Look at Wario. Hey.
I was dead wrong.
Hey,
dead wrong. It's getting votes.
And Alon wanted to put in driver, and I was like, driver.
Getting votes.
Yo, welcome to the wide flank world.
We got all these Ralph Naders stealing votes from the main two parties. Let's see.
Absolutely.
Right now, Bayonetta's at 9, Wave Race is at 9, Wario Land at 7, Driver at 6, and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 at 5. Anything could win by the time the deadline hits.
Hey, it's an exciting time to be in the wide flank Discord. Come on down. You should, if you're listening to this podcast, turn off the podcast. Open a URL on your telephone. Open up an application. It might connect. It might open a new browser window. It's not seamless.
Yes.
But if you do find your way to the wide flank Discord, oh boy, will it be an amazing time for you and us.
Incredible.
The Dev Talk.
And then come back to this podcast and finish it.
Yes.
Because you want to also subscribe and rate and review. Anyway, Sean, what are we talking? What did the Dev Talk do?
I, and Francisco, a man named Francisco González, the one-man studio, essentially, of Grundislav Games. And he works with like a team of all sorts of collaborators. Quite famously, there's a lot of like union voice acting talent on his video game, Rosewater, which is what we're discussing on today's Dev Talk. And not only that, we're not just talking about his game. We're talking about him as a creator, his path into making games. Some of what were some of the early games that he was talking about that I had no knowledge of?
We both had like little to no knowledge of everything he was talking about. We kind of just let him cook. I mean, Hugo's House of Horrors and the Hugo series, Click and Play, Reality on the Norm. Because as you can, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just gonna say, like we went from his early game memories and influences straight into sort of adventure games, specifically because Rosewater is an adventure game, and his history also with adventure games. So we were talking about the Adventure Company, where he makes games or started making games, and Reality on the Norm, which is like a collective forums of everyone makes games in the same world or something like that.
Yeah, like it's like there's shared assets between everybody, and so it was a deep dive. Like he dove pretty deep into like being on the internet in like 2005, which baby. And also I want to describe Rosewater a little bit, which is like it's very much an adventure game in the mold of the old LucasArts games. Because Alon, you've some familiarity of LucasArts.
A little bit. Just a little bit. Yeah.
Monkey Island.
Never played it. Day of the Tentacle played.
Day of the Tentacle.
I'm there. Yeah. And it's a Western in like the 1850s, 19th century. Same world as his last game, Lamplight City. And I don't know, it made me think of like the Oregon Trail era of game or something like that.
Sure, yeah, it's like very it's like an alternate reality Western. Like he's like affording himself like some latitude with regards to like what's the reality of the game world. But yeah, it's we let him cook. He had a lot to say. It was a lovely conversation, I think, though. And without further ado, what do you say we get into it?
Get into it. And if you're listening at home, there's a free demo on Steam. We'll link to it in the show notes. It's not too long. It's fun. It's cool. It's chill. Very chill. You just lounge and click around and check it out. And Bye.
Yeah, that was sorry. I mean, I know we're trying to wrap up, but something I think I mentioned it on the episode that like while playing the game, I just kept repeatedly being like, "This is so chill,
so chill,
this is so chill," and I think that's a reflection of both like Francisco as a person, but also like the medium of adventure. That was another thing he was popping off about, right? Like about like that adventure games could be like their own format, essentially, like in a way that's like super distinct. And
I think I remember him saying, I want this to be a serious genre telling serious stories, because I, like an idiot, asked, like, are all adventure games jokes? Is that just jokes part of the genre?
And he got a dark he got so serious. He got so mad. He got so mad at Alon.
Flipped the fuck out.
He left the call midway through the
You did leave the call for other reasons.
Well, I mean, ironically, yes, he did actually leave the call. You'll see if you're watching the video version. But if you're, anyhow, enjoy the episode.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello and welcome to a Wide Flank Dev Talk. Today, Sean and I are joined by Francisco González, founder of Grundislav Games. And today we're talking about their upcoming Western point-and-click adventure game, Rosewater. Hi, Francisco. We're so happy to have you on.
Hello. I'm very happy to be here.
It's great to have you. We're very excited to be talking about Rosewater. Point-and-click adventure games are something that I don't know if I would call them near and dear to my heart. Alon, what's your familiarity with point-and-click adventure games? Let's just like lay it all out.
We're going deep in the recesses here, but I mean, I watched my brothers play Myst. I had Day of the Tentacle on one of those, not a floppy disk, one of those giant actual floppy soft disks, B drive.
Okay.
But I was so young, like I just remember kind of what it looked like and like barely anything about the game. And then I went, a 20-year gap of not playing any. Before we just kind of played Oberdin and Resident Evil, and those are kind of, I don't know, sort of adjacent to the genre. That's my history.
Yeah, adventure adjacent. And like to that same point of what Alon was talking about, Francisco, the first question we have for you here is what was your start? What was your path into games? Like as a player first? Like what are some of your earliest memories of playing games as a kid?
So my path into games, my earliest memory is actually, because I'm very old, I remember we had an Atari 2600 when I was a very small child. And I remember playing Pitfall, and I remember playing Omega Race, which was basically a game where it was black and white, and there was a large rectangle in the middle of the screen. And you had to race your little circles and triangles around the thing. It always makes me laugh. Like it reminds me of like there's a radio ad in GTA Vice City where they're talking about like a home console like the Atari, and it's like, and here's the action game where you have to take the red square against the evil blue dot or whatever. And then it's just variants on the same theme. And it's like, it's like, and here's the racing game where you race your blue square around the green dot. And it's like, literally, that's what it was. So that's my earliest memory of like playing video games. But like, I grew up, I actually got a Sega Master System before I got an NES. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody recently who they were like shocked that I had a Sega because they didn't think that was like a thing here in the US, but it was. I had one. Yeah, so I basically I had consoles growing up, and then around like I want to say 1990, 91, we got a PC. And I basically started playing games on that. Like I played all the old like Apogee, id, whatever, like platformers like Commander Keen. And I remember like, like you were saying, Alon, like the floppy disks, like there was bookstores that you could go to and they had like shareware floppy disks that you could get stuff off of. I remember playing probably the first adventure game that I played called Hugo's House of Horrors, which was like this little adventure game, text parser game where you played this guy named Hugo who has to save his girlfriend from a haunted house. And yeah, so
Cool.
like that basically was my path. And then I kind of just played all of for a while there. I kind of stopped. I got a Sega Genesis. That was like my 16-bit. I really wanted a Super Nintendo, but for whatever reason, I never got one. And yet that was like the most confusing Christmas for me, right? Because I was like, I begged for a Super Nintendo. So I really wanted to play Super Mario World. I begged for a Super Nintendo. My parents were like, no, you're not getting a Super Nintendo for whatever reason.
This is a Sega household.
Well, yeah. And then I was like, and then just on an off chance, I was like, well, can I have a Sega Genesis for Christmas? And they're like, okay, sure. And I was like, what? I don't understand. I don't get it.
That rules.
I actually have a theory, but I'm not 100% sure. There was a commercial, and I apologize for all these tangents I'm probably going to go off on.
These are good.
I love it. This is what it's all
this
about.
is good.
There was a commercial, and you can probably find it on YouTube now. I remember when the Super Nintendo was like hyping up and soft launching and everything, or whatever you call that. There was a commercial where it was like this scary, like polarized, like bald man's close-up head in the frame. And it was like, and when I say polarized, I mean like negative image. So like, he was just like freaky. It was kind of like Max Headroom, but not really. So he's like, he's like, you gotta play it. You've got to own it. You've got a reputation.
You've played every Mario game. You conquered every Mario game. You think you've mastered all there is to know about Mario. Well, you better think again. New Super Mario World, made possible by the power of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. You've never faced the challenge of so many enemies, so many obstacles, so many levels. You've never needed help from a dinosaur before. Super Mario World, you get it only with a Super NES. It's part of the growing lineup of games for the next generation from Nintendo. You've got to play it. You've got to have it. You've got a reputation. Now you're playing with power. Super power.
And it was like, it was implying that like you weren't going to be cool if you didn't have a Super Nintendo. And I remember my mom had gone back to college at the time, and she was taking a class on like advertising something or other. I don't even remember what the class was, but I remember like telling her about this commercial, and she used it in like a paper about like an example of how like advertising manipulated children into like buying it. And I kind of wonder if that soured her on the Super Nintendo, and she didn't want me to have one because she thought she didn't want to like give in to the advertisement thing.
Totally.
Like, so
overt manipulation. Because it's like, do they call it the play it loud era? Is that a thing? Does that ring a bell for anyone? Play it loud?
Kind of. Yeah.
I think it's just like a general like catch-all phrase for that era of like early 90s marketing, which is really like in your face and like making value judgments about you as a player or like or as a child, because it's marketing towards children, right?
It was like a precursor to the Get Good era, I guess.
Sure.
Get Good era. Now we're talking. Now I'm cracking my knuckles.
But anyway, just to finish up, so like I had a Sega Genesis, and then I kind of didn't have a console again until I got a PS3. So all in the meantime, actually that's not true. I had a hand-me-down PS2 from my dad for a little while, but then when I got it, like I got back into console gaming with the PS3, and in the meantime, like from I want to say like 1994 to 2007, like big adventure games on my PC, because I never had like a gaming PC. I never played anything graphically intensive. I think the most graphically intensive thing I remember playing in the late 90s was like Tomb Raider 2. And I bought like a Voodoo 2 graphics card just to play that. Yeah. So like now the tables have turned, because I guess we'll get into that when I actually started making games, which was in the early 2000s. I stopped playing games on the PC, and now like I only play games on console.
Okay.
So,
really
interesting.
Yeah.
Are any of your titles available on console releases, or are they sort of bound to the mouse control?
Lamplight City is on Nintendo Switch, if that counts.
Okay,
cool.
It counts.
Okay.
It's a console.
That's definitely a console.
So here's another thing. Like,
What?
I also, because I only had I still actually have.
So Lamplight City you've released on the Nintendo Switch.
Yes.
Like there is, and I mean, part of me wants to like dig into that and like talk about
sure.
like were you involved with the porting process or
No,
like
not at all. I mean, aside from like answering technical questions like why did you code this way? This is completely destroying the Switch's memory limitations. Can we figure out how to do something else? But no, it was done via an independent contractor who ported it. So yeah, I have no idea how to do that. So yeah. But I was gonna say also because there was that sort of gap, like between like the only Nintendo console I've ever owned is the 8-bit NES. Like the classic Nintendo stuff has completely passed me by. Like I have played maybe 2 Zelda games. I've played Super Mario World, and that's it. Yeah. Like, you know, obviously I played the NES Marios and Super Mario World on SNES later on an emulator. But like,
sure,
you know, people get all excited for like, oh boy, Mario Paper Mario Luigi, and I'm like, I'm sorry.
Who is that?
I'm not. No, I mean,
Dude,
I know who it is.
Right there with you.
Good.
By the way,
I'm glad because sometimes I feel like I'm the only person. It's like I also feel
Mario 64. No idea. Yeah.
I also feel like I'm the only person of my generation who does not have like an instantly accessible repository of Simpsons quotes in my mind.
Oh, I'm
Sure.
with you there too.
Good.
Yeah, we're really aligned here.
You could say.
I'm not sure if we should go deeper into point and click adventures or deeper into like making your games. I don't know, maybe point and click adventures. So was Haunted House, I don't know anything about this Atari game Haunted House, but was that sort of like an early point and click adventure style for you, or was that sort of where you became interested in sort of like an adventure type of game, or where did that sort of begin? Because as far as I know, Lamplight and Rosewater, I played a little of the Rosewater demo, are both kind of classic point and click adventure games.
Funnily enough, I want to say the game that kind of gave me the bug for like the very basic elements of a point and click adventure was actually an RPG. It was Dragon Warrior on the NES.
Heck yeah,
dude! Which
awesome.
I don't know if you all remember, but Nintendo Power Magazine had like a subscription incentive where if you subscribed to Nintendo Power, they would send you a free copy of Dragon Warrior. This was like in
that rocks.
I want to say
we were both too young for that.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, I want to say I was like in 2nd grade, so that would have been like 1989, 1990, maybe. So yeah, were you even born?
And what was
then?
it? I'm from 1990. Alon, when were you born?
87.
Well, we're both a little too young.
I have older brothers, which is where all my, NES and Myst and all that stuff sort of came from. But yeah,
I love how you say I'm from 1990. Like I'm from Canada. I'm from 1990.
Yeah. We do things differently in 1990.
Okay, well that's not so bad. I mean, I was born in 1982, so I'm old, but
same generation.
Yeah, same generation-ish. Yeah, shiny. So anyway, so Dragon Warrior, I still have it. I played it, and I think it was something about just the very not simplistic, but the very base thing of like talking to characters, being given a task or a quest, and like the excitement of like going and finding something and then solving the quest or what have you. That gameplay loop or that mechanic, I guess. Really fascinated me as a child. And then when I started playing actually more adventure games and but you mentioned Haunted House on Atari. I don't remember. Is that
Hugo's House of Horrors?
Sorry.
No,
I messed that up.
No, it's fine. Hugo's House of Horrors was on PC. It was DOS.
Oh, okay, my bad.
No, it's all good. It was actually a trilogy, funnily enough. There was Hugo's House of Horrors, there was Hugo 2 Whodunit, and Hugo 3 Jungle of Doom.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Getting a little out there.
Look them up on
the
Moby
third
Games.
one.
They were great because they were done by one guy. I played that, and that was a pure adventure game because it was like you were playing a character, you moved around, you had to type the commands, you had to like look at stuff, you had to pick stuff up, you had to use objects. And then I played King's Quest V on the NES, funnily enough, which is a terrible port. And that that really solidified my, I like this kind of game, I want to play more. And then the more I played, I was like, I'd like to make one someday. So yeah.
So you started thinking, I want to make a point and click adventure game, like at a pretty early age, would you say?
I would say at least. I know in high school I definitely wanted to do it. And then a friend gave me a copy of a program called Click and Play.
Okay.
Which later became something that everybody knows now that I don't remember what it's called. Game Maker? Is that right?
That's
a software, I think.
Yeah.
That exists.
Well, Click and Play was the very early version of that. It was for Windows 3.1, and it was actually pretty powerful if you want to make like platformers. Couldn't really make pointy clicks in it because but like, yeah, so I played around in that, and I made a bunch of little stupid games in that. And then I was like, I'd like to make more games. So then when I was in college, I randomly Googled Adventure Game Maker, and I found an engine called Adventure Game Studio, which was developed by a guy named Chris Jones in the UK. And the interesting thing about this, because I actually should backpedal a little bit, when I was working in Click and Play, I found a group of people were working on, or maybe it was two people. They were working on an engine called Scram, SCRAMM.
Okay.
Which different from Scum?
Yes, it was, I think, because Scum is script creation utility for Maniac Mansion. Scram was a thing that there was a couple of people working on, which was like script creation after something. It was based on Scum, and it was like they were making all these promises about like how it was going to be so cool and blah blah blah, and like most of these things, it was like vaporware. It never came out. But funnily enough, a couple of the people who were working, or at least one of the people who was working on it, went on to work for Telltale. So that's cool.
Okay.
Yeah. So out of that community of people that were like on the forums patiently waiting for this Scram thing to show up, I found a lead to this Adventure Game Studio engine, which actually had been released, and there had actually been games made with it and finished with it, which was of the utmost importance because, be able to finish a game in it was like, it's great. So I played, I don't remember which game it was, but I know it was by Ben Croshaw, who you might know as Yahtzee from Zero Punctuation, from The Escapist, because he used to make adventure games back in the day. And I joined the AGS community like right after he had left in like some sort of controversy. I think it was just like, he was young and he was arrogant and he was like, I'm better than all of you. And everyone was like, get out of here. And he was like, okay, I'm taking my business elsewhere.
I don't need you.
Exactly. So yeah, I started messing around in it, and I had no programming experience. I had like no art experience, aside from like, taking art classes and studying art and stuff. I had no like computer digital art experience really. So I basically just like messed around in Photoshop, started doing like really basic pixel art. And there was this community project called Reality on the Norm, which was like, it was set in like this English small town, and that was the setting. And the art style was really, really rudimentary, like MS Paint level, basically. Mm-hmm. And the idea was that, no matter what your skill level, you could download the background. Like the first group of set of like characters and backgrounds had been done by Yahtzee, and then other people started making games too. And the idea was that when you made a game, you would upload your assets so that they were available publicly. And so like if you wanted to use someone else's backgrounds, you could. If you wanted to draw your own backgrounds, you could, as long as you uploaded them. So it was like a crowdsourced community project
Yeah.
with the resources. And like it was really cool because when it first started there weren't that many people doing it, so like it was a lot more tight knit, and like there was a lot more communication. Like there was some people that would make games that would be like sequels to other people's games, or like in parallel with other people's games. So I messed around in that, and it was really like quirky comedy too, so it was like screwball comedy. So like the first game I made was about a pirate who comes to the town and like is looking for the lost treasure of Reality on the Norm, and he ends up like becoming the postman. And then in the second game, which was called Hooky McPegleg Pirate Postman, he becomes the postman, but he can't read. Plot twist. So like the whole thing is that he has to learn how to read in order to deliver the mail. Yeah.
So there's like a joke punchline setup, like
basically
into it.
And like like the story was like there was no story. It was just like, oh, it's funny, he's a pirate, he can't read, like let's have some stupid puzzles. Because at that point, like I had played adventure games and I wasn't really thinking about like, I wasn't thinking too deeply about like actual gameplay design and stuff. I was just kind of like, oh well, these are kind of like the puzzles in the games I played, I'll just make something similar and hope people like it. And we had lower standards back then, so it was fine. And like all the music was like just like completely just like copyright infringement midis of like rock songs and stuff. So
Hell yeah.
yeah. And then I made my magnum opus of Reality on the Norm, which was called The Chef, which was about, because somebody had taken like the main town square background, which was like this big scrolling background, and put like an Italian restaurant in it. And I was like, I'm gonna make a game about the Italian restaurant. So I made a game about a chef named Chef Luca and his nudist brother Guido. And
Beautiful.
And the plot of the game is that his restaurant gets shut down by the health inspector, and so he has to go on a quest to like figure out why, and then there's this whole conspiracy about like why the restaurants are getting shut down. And in the meantime there's this subplot about like him coming to accept his brother's lifestyle. And like and it was all
it's nice.
It was all in service of a really bad punchline at the very end, where he goes, Guido, I've accepted your nudist lifestyle and I agree with you, and from now on I'm going to be called the Naked Chef, like the show The Naked Chef. And then there was this ridiculous animation of him just like ripping off his clothes, and all censored of course with a and that was really stupid. But I had a lot of fun making that, and it was very well received. So
jokes
go for it, Alon.
I was just gonna a casual mention that like I had this thing in my notes that like jokes are just part of this genre. Like jokes, I remember from what my early memories of like Day of the Tentacle and stuff, I'm like, oh, they're always jokes. And then playing the Rosewater demo, one of the first things I did was walk into the physician's office and, the For the Soul pun. Right. And I was like, that's when I wrote the note. I was like, are just jokes just part of adventure game? Is that like a cornerstone of the genre?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I have very strong opinions on this, especially recently. Yes. So I'm going to say yes, but so anybody who grew up playing the classic adventure games in the 90s knows that there was Sierra Online and there was LucasArts.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a few other studios like Revolution, like I mentioned before we were recording, that did Broken Sword.
Yeah.
And if you look at the catalogs of those companies, Sierra had their like flagship series obviously was the King's Quest series. Which
I thought you were gonna say Leisure Suit Larry.
No. Well, that was another one. But like their flagship one, which they used to like, demonstrate all the new technological achievements and everything, was the King's Quest series.
Can I'd just like to observe how quickly you sidestepped Leisure Suit Larry. You don't want to talk about Leisure Suit Larry?
I'll talk about Leisure Suit Larry.
Okay.
So their flagship series was King's Quest, which was like high fantasy, fairy tale, whatever, right? And then they did have some comedy series like Space Quest and Leisure Suit Larry. And they also had Police Quest, which was not comedy. It was very, very by the book, very, propaganda. So Sierra had those. So 2 out of the 4 like big Quest series, or there was also Quest for Glory, which is RPG. But anyway,
Okay.
yes, there were a lot of comedy serial games. If you look at LucasArts' catalog, most of them were comedies. You had Monkey Island, you had Sam and Max, you had Day of the Tentacle, you have Indiana Jones was not comedy. The Dig was not comedy. Full Throttle was also not comedy. But yes, to your point, there were a lot of comedy adventure games. A lot. And I think that I have this whole bugbear now where I'm like, I want the genre to be taken seriously as a medium to tell serious stories.
Okay.
And I think that it can be done because there have been serious adventure games. But I also think, to your point, that there are a lot of people who maybe haven't played an adventure game in a long time, or have never played an adventure game and have only like heard of them secondhand or whatever, who make that association.
Yeah.
Because automatically the first thing you think about when you think of adventure games is like, oh, use random object on other random objects to solve ridiculous puzzle that you never would have thought of in a million years. Which, yes, there is a lot of that bad design in a lot of the early adventure games.
Sure.
But it's just, it seems like the adventure genre is, and don't get me wrong, there's been plenty of innovation and stuff recently and stuff, but like it just seems to me like, the adventure game genre in particular just seems to be like stuck a lot of the times, because there's a lot of people who are nostalgic for the classic games, and who, if anything new comes out and it doesn't meet their standards of what they think the class, like if it's not like the classic games, they immediately write it off. If it's too different from the classic games, they're like, well, this isn't really an adventure game. Or you have people who are like, oh, it's an adventure game, I'm not going to play that because it's stupid and it's got dumb puzzles and stuff. And actually, it's funny because like there's someone I know who has this really interesting theory, because there was a period of time, like end of the 90s, early 2000s, where obviously like Sierra and LucasArts stopped making adventure games, and the slack was picked up by a lot of European companies. And they made, like, there was a lot of games that were made by like developers in Germany or Spain or France or what have you. And they got those, they had those, there was a pretty popular publishing company called The Adventure Company. I forget where they were based, but they basically like translated a lot of these games and published them. Games like Runaway, A Road Adventure, or Siberia, or I forget what else, Moment of Silence, things like that. And a lot of these games had really weird puzzles. Oh, there's another game called Secret Files Tunguska, which
what's got you? Why are you so delighted by Secret? What is it?
Secret Files Tunguska. There's more than one of these games in the series. I'm delighted by it because I've in the past I've taught classes about like adventure game design, or I've talked about adventure game design, and I've talked about how there's a weird genre of puzzles which is sticking things to animals. Like literally sticking things to animals. And Secret Files Tunguska has a classic puzzle in that genre, which is I'm going to tell you about, and then I'm going to tell you about the theory that this guy has, which I think is very plausible.
Okay.
The puzzle in Secret Files Tunguska is, the setup for it is you play this woman and she's at a house, and there's two people inside the house that are having a conversation, and she wants to overhear this conversation.
Okay.
That's the setup for the puzzle.
Yeah.
The solution to the puzzle is this. There's a cat. You have to feed the cat like cat food that you get. You have to put salt in it so that the cat gets thirsty, and the cat will go inside the house through the cat flap to where the people are. You also have to tape your cell phone to the back of the cat. And then call your own cell phone so that it's essentially a walkie-talkie. The cat goes into the house with the cell phone taped to its back, and she's listening on the phone to her own phone that she's called, so she can hear the conversation through her phone.
It's unbelievable.
I'm sure this is a tired conversation when it comes to point-and-click adventure games of like, how could the player ever figure that out? But like, truly, like, what?
Exactly. But this is where my friend's theory comes in, which is that There are puzzles like that in the classic games, but they're few and far between. But it seems like a lot of these developers played these games and thought, oh, adventure games, they must have these puzzles. And they actively were like, well, let's make the puzzle as obscure and obtuse as possible, because that's just how adventure games are.
Yeah.
And so I think that perpetuated that. And that's why you get a lot of these games, these later games that did stuff like that still.
Right.
So that's very interesting.
Is that something then that you like sort of push back against in your own designs?
100%.
Like you
100%.
Do you try to prioritize more like intuitive connections and things like this? Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's a double-edged sword, because then you have people who are used to playing challenging adventure games and they think, oh, well, when I was a kid, I used to get stuck on these games forever. And so therefore, in order to be a challenging game, it must be hard and I must get stuck. But the reality of it is now, like, with the internet, people, first of all, there's many things working against it in the design aspect of it. One is that you have the internet and you can instantly search for a walkthrough or whatever. The second thing is that there's way too many games now. So if someone gets stuck in your game, they're gonna put it down and they're not gonna come back to it. And the other thing is that, like, nobody wants to get stuck anymore. Like, so obviously you don't want someone to get frustrated and leave your game. So you don't want to design something that is so ridiculously obtuse. But then the other side of that coin is that if it's logical, then it makes sense. And then it's too easy. Because it's like, well, of course I would have thought to do that. That's just logical. And that happens to be the solution. So then it's like, well, yes. So one of the things I struggle with the most is finding that balance in puzzle design, because I don't want it to be ridiculously easy, but I also don't want it to be just like stupidly obscure and complex.
Well, I would imagine that as like the person designing the puzzles, it can be a little hard to get perspective on like what's natural. Like I saw like a Tim Schafer interview once where he was talking about like watching people play test a game and like losing his mind that people are not putting X onto Y, because it's like, why wouldn't you put X onto Y? Like, because to him it's a foregone conclusion.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like, how do you get perspective on your own puzzles? Like,
well, you just answered the questions. Play testing. I mean, you play testing as early as possible. Like, you know, even when the game is just like a bunch of stick figures and sketch drawings, like as long as the puzzle the puzzle design is implemented, you know, I like to at least get eyes on it as quickly as possible, just to figure out, you know, if there's something I'm missing completely, or if just like, you know, there's something else that seems logical that I haven't thought of, that they're like, well, why can't I have, like, you know, classic example, you know, you have to cut something and you have one item that is scissors, for example, but you have another item that is sharp and you didn't think about the fact that, oh, well, what if I use that thing, right? And then okay, well, so you can never design 100% for everybody, because there's always going to be somebody that thinks a little different, and you might see a possibility that, or they might uncover a possibility that you never thought of. But I mean, overall, I strive not to. I try and think of puzzles more as obstacles rather than like, you know, you're in the middle of this story and now it's time to do what I like to call a highlights magazine puzzle, where it's like solve a maze or do a sliding tile puzzle or like do a word search or something like that, right? Like, like if it's something that's blocking your progress, it should make sense within the context of the story, and the solution to it should reveal something about either the character that's blocking your progress, or your own character, or like the world, or something like that, right? Like, I was
kind of thinking while you were talking, is like, it's almost like you have to crystallize who are you designing for, as well as playtesting, right? Because different people pay different amounts of attention, and they do or don't remember things from dialogue earlier in the game.
Exactly.
How much time has passed since they last played, and
that,
so you almost have to. It's almost sort of why I have this like half-baked theory of like, well, point and click adventures used to be like the AAA game. And now it seems like more of like sort of an indie game genre for the most part. And I think that's sort of why is like you're competing with, it's like an attention economy and you're competing for people's attention and you're competing with like Netflix and TikTok and like, and so like you said, like people getting stuck, they just give up. Like, unless they're really into it, they're just done. They're like, this is too crazy. I'll just look it up and whatever, you know? And so I don't really have a question specifically, but yeah, I mean it just seems so difficult in this specific genre to like, you have to like provide goals, but you don't want to make it too easy. And you kind of have to signpost what direction to go on and give some feedback that like you're on the right track, but not like, hey, the answer's right over there. It just seems like so complicated to me. Like, how do you keep track of like the decision trees and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I feel like, and I'm not claiming that I've like cracked the code because I'm just going by like what I've found that has worked for me. But like, I think there's two things that are very important because like you said, like people play and they get stuck. And one of the things that makes me sad is like when I see people say, oh, I'm too stupid for this game, or like, it's too hard. It's like, no, you're not too stupid. You're not too hard. It's not your fault. It's never the player's fault. It's usually the game's fault. Like, let's be honest. The two things that are most important, I think, are communication and reactivity. Because communication, like you say, is important because you need to always have a clear idea of what you're doing. Like, even if it's basic, even if it's just like, I have to get through that door. Right? And then it can get more complex because it's like, oh, I have to get through that door, but I can't because this. Like there's a guy guarding it. Okay, well now I have to deal with how to get the guy letting me through. Okay, but the guy wants this or whatever. You know, that's where you get into all the puzzle chain. Exactly right. So at every step of the way, you need to have like a clear idea. And like nowadays, people have shorter attention spans, but there's also been quality of life adaptations for that. Like, you know, like recently Return to Monkey Island and Thimbleweed Park, they have a to-do list, right? Like there's always, you can access that at any given time. Like a game might have an in-game hint system or an in-game journal or something that indicates to you like what you need to be doing at that time. Because like you say, if you put it down and you come back to it, it refreshes you on what your goals are and what you're doing. The second thing is reactivity. And I gave a talk about this at this conference in London last year called Adventure X, because I've noticed that a lot of the times, especially in the older games that had like the more, the interfaces with like more verbs and things like that. Yeah. It gives you this illusion of being able to do more stuff. But in reality, it's not really, you can't, because you have all these verbs, but like 9 times out of 10, if you use like say push on like a plant, the character will say, I can't move that. Yeah. Like 99% of the reactions to your experimentation is, I can't do that. I don't know how that will work. Why? Yeah. So the game is telling you no. It's actively telling you no in a genre that encourages exploration. Yeah. So I think it's important to have reactivity where it's like not generic messages if you do that, right? Like if you're going to give the player the chance to interact with something, you should give them a reward for doing that. Not, no, I can't do that. Like, you know, if it gets to, and you can control that with gameplay. Like the way I do it in Rosewater, for example, with like inventory, which the classic thing is like, you know, people get stuck and they start using every inventory item on every hotspot. Right. Yeah. The way I mitigate that in Rosewater is you can like an inventory item will only highlight and be able to be used on a hotspot. Yeah. It'll only be able to, you can only do that on a cursor where the puzzle solution involves using an inventory item on it. Otherwise it won't. And if you click, nothing happens because you can't. So like, you know, if there's again, to the classic door example, if there's a door and like you use a letter on the door, you know, she'll say, well, you know, I forget what the exact line is, but she's like, you know, the letters or like literature is the key to any door, any lock, but not in this case or something like that. Right? It's like so it's a funny little message or like it's, you know, it's like, I get that you tried that. It's not the right solution, or it's an opportunity to push to nudge them in what they should be doing.
Communicating from the designer to the player.
Exactly.
It sounds like it's an opportunity for you as designer to like sketch, even if it's just a little punchline like that. It's an opportunity for you to connect more directly with the player in a way.
Exactly. And as the player, you feel more connected to the game, and you feel like it feels like a more personalized experience in a way if you know the game is responding to something that you tried, because you know even if it's something out there, you're like, oh, the designer actually anticipated that I would do that, and that's really good. It's like a little, I call it the little handshake between the designer and the player.
And
that's so nice.
We just played Resident Evil, and I think like it's a really really great example of that. Like the first Resident Evil, like you can just mash, you know, A or X or whatever you're playing it on anywhere in any room, and usually nothing happens. But if it does, there's usually some like weirdly descriptive text that you didn't expect coming, like whether it's like it's too dark to see anything outside, or it's a description of this like oil painting in front of you, and just like that rocks, you know, like this feels like I'm in the world a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
And often enough in that game, it's like you'll get prompts that are the sort of generic, like, I can't do anything with this.
Nothing useful.
So it's an interesting game in that it's got a good amount of both kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not here to talk about Resident Evil.
No.
We're here to talk about Rosewater, baby.
Right.
So, what is Rosewater for like the listener who hasn't checked it out before listening to this podcast? Like how would you describe Rosewater?
So Rosewater is, funnily enough, a point and click adventure game.
Oh,
Funnily enough. Yeah, I know, right? It is a Western. It is set in an alternate history 19th century, which has elements of steampunk in it, which is actually the world that I created for the previous game I did called Lamplight City, which you mentioned earlier. And Rosewater is a game in which you play as a woman named Harley Legere, who is a former boxer turned writer who has come to the town of Rosewater seeking a job opportunity at the local newspaper. And in the course of doing so, she is assigned to interview this legend of the West named gentleman Jake Ackerman, who's putting on a show in town. And Jake tells her that he's going out looking for this lost fortune, and he recruits her to come along in search of this lost fortune. And she gathers up a posse, and they go and they travel across the frontier in search of this lost fortune, and hijinks ensue. And that is Rosewater in a nutshell.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
So both Rosewater and Lamplight City take place, like you said, in the 19th century, 1850 specifically for Rosewater. I'm just curious, like, have you always been interested in this time period? Like, you love Western movies, or you love Oregon Trail or something? You know, like what attached you to this time period?
Funnily enough, I wasn't a huge fan of Westerns before.
Okay.
I still wouldn't say I am. But I guess I always sort of have been interested in... So I mentioned Broken Sword earlier. And Broken Sword is a game which does the same thing that another Sierra game did. Gabriel Knight, Sins of the Fathers. There's a whole Gabriel Knight series. It's one of my favorite games. The thing I love about those games is that they take place in like the real world, but they blend history and fiction. So like the plot of Broken Sword is very Da Vinci Code, even though it came out before the Da Vinci Code. It's all about like the Templars and, you know, hidden secrets and stuff. And like Gabriel Knight also blends fiction, history and fiction. Like the first game is about like a voodoo cult in New Orleans, and the second game is about like King Ludwig of Bavaria, and the third one's about like vampires in Rennes-le-Chateau. And it's I've always loved that like blending of history and fiction.
Yeah.
And when like after I finished with Reality on the Norm, I made this freeware series. I say freeware because they're free to play. They're all on itch now too. It's called Ben Jordan Paranormal Investigator, and it was very influenced by Gabriel Knight. And it's about a kid named Ben Jordan who's a paranormal investigator, funnily enough. And I wanted to do like each game be a short. I wanted to like have every game be a short game that was like an individual case and like have it be a series with like an overarching narrative and stuff. But I wanted to focus on like actual local mythology and legends and folklore and stuff like that rather than being like a monster of the week thing.
Right.
So I did that for a while. And then when I started doing like commercial games in 2014, because Rosewater and Lamplight City, well, Lamplight City is my most recent release, which was 2018, which is ages ago. But it's actually, Rosewater will be my fourth game. The first commercial game I did was called A Golden Wake, which was a historical fiction game about a real estate agent in 1920s Miami.
Okay.
Because I grew up in Miami and I really thought that period of time was interesting, like the whole land boom and like all these people coming down there and like all these crazy things that happen. So it was a very personal project that I was like, oh yeah, this is great. I want to make an adventure game about this. So I've always been like the history guy, I guess.
Yeah.
And then the second game that I made, it originally started that I wanted to make a game set during like the Black Plague. And the two ideas I had were I wanted to make it be set in the Black Plague, and I wanted a character that was like the personification of death that was like represented by a raven.
Okay.
Wild. Poetic.
Those are those are my two things. But then I teamed up with a friend of mine who's an artist who we worked together on the game and we workshopped it and we ended up making it a post-apocalyptic game set in the future about a plague. And there was a character called the Reaper who was like a raven guy. But anyway, that game's called Shardlight. And that came out in 2016. So yeah, essentially I've always liked that. And then when I finished with Shardlight, I was like, well, what do I want to do next? And then I was like, I've always loved the like Sherlock Holmes, like gritty Victorian era thing. I want to try doing something like that. But then I also, because A Golden Wake was so like based on actual history, I found that in a lot of ways that kind of limited me in how much artistic license I could take, and I was kind of too focused on the history. So I was like, I want to do something that feels like this, but I don't want it to be like it has to be London in 1844 or whatever. So that's why I went with the alternate history thing, and I created the whole thing. So like in this world, like the U.S. never declared independence, and it's the Commonwealth of Vespuccia. So like in Lamplight City, Lamplight City is like the nickname for the city of New Britannia, which is like the blend of like 19th century New Orleans, New York, and London. So it's kind of like the cherry picking the elements that I like of like 19th century detective fiction. And it's like a detective game set in this world, and then it gave me my own opportunity to like create the world and make my own stuff. So in the process of doing that, I was like, well, I've created this world. It's interesting. The time period is very specific. What more of this world could I explore? And then I realized, well, it lines up with the Old West. So I was like, what would the Old West look like in this world? And that's where the idea for Rosewater came from. And then it kind of just blossomed from there. And like ever since, like I do like, I haven't seen like a bunch of like the classic spaghetti westerns, but I like more like the neo westerns, like There Will Be Blood or like No Country for Old Men.
Sure,
totally.
Stuff like that. So yeah, it was really interesting. And the other thing, going back to what we were talking about before, is that there are actually very, very few Western point and clicks that are not comedies. There's very few Western point and clicks to begin with. Like probably the most well known is a Sierra game called Freddie Farkas Frontier Pharmacist, which was developed by the same guy who made Leisure Suit Larry.
There we go.
And that is very much like a Blazing Saddles like screwball.
Yeah.
There's another game called Three Skulls of the Toltecs, who I forget developed that. I think it was a Spanish company. That's also a comedy. So like there's very few non-comedy Westerns. So I thought, okay, well, that's cool. And also I was like, Lamplight City is a detective game. It's very much focused on like, the investigation and the interrogation, and like there's no inventory puzzles in that game because I didn't think they fit, So here I was like, well, I want to do an adventure game like Indiana Jones style, where like you feel like you're going on an adventure. So Rosewater is very much that. And like my soundbite is like, I want it because it deals with like building up this crew, this posse, and like the character relationships actually affect the gameplay. a lot and like the branching of the story, like I wanted that to be the focus, and my description is like I want the game to feel like you're going on a road trip with your friends. It just happens to be that your friends are in the Old West and you're going in like this wagon across the frontier. So yeah. So hopefully that was not too meandering a response.
No, it's
thorough.
It's thorough, and it gives us a perspective into like the different types of designs that you can bake into like the point and click format, which I think goes back to like sort of what you were sort of getting at earlier in the conversation about like wanting to treat point and click adventure games as like not like as a medium unto themselves. Like, would you agree with that language? Or
yeah, because it's interesting too, like how it's sort of branched out, because nowadays point and click adventures are their own thing, but then you have the wider spectrum of narrative games. And within narrative games, you have things like interactive fiction, which is, I honestly haven't explored too much of that. But to me, interactive fiction is text adventures, which text adventures are another thing entirely. Like interactive fiction does not necessarily equal text adventures, but it's kind of in that vein, right?
Yeah.
So, but then you also have like walking simulators, which used to be a derogatory term, but now it's like it's been taken back, right?
Embraced.
And exactly. But it's like you have games like like Obra Dinn, for example, which is not a walking simulator.
No,
but it's not really an adventure game. Like it's a detective game.
Yeah,
and it's a great game. I love that game, and it was lauded for its narrative. But it's like, yes, it has a narrative, but you're piecing together the narrative.
Yeah,
and it's not like super complex. It's basically just what happened to all these people. Okay, that's fair. That's a good narrative.
Yeah,
but like, it's interesting to me how like games like Obra Dinn or like What Remains of Edith Finch or like The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, games like that are like praised for their like really like introspective narratives, or like, oh, they're telling a serious story and stuff like that. And then you look at point and clicks and it's like, oh, those are funny games where you like kill a clown with like a scalpel or whatever.
I was gonna say put poop on a monkey.
Exactly. Put poop on a monkey, right? Yeah. So it's like I wish that I want to see more point and clicks, and I'm in my own way trying to do this in a way. Like I want to see point and clicks taken seriously as a medium where you can have a story like that that's not ruined by like the idea that, well, it's a great story, but I'm also putting poop on a monkey, right? Like something about the gameplay where it's not associated with just this ridiculous comedy thing,
I was going to ask you, like, do you come from a writing background or a storytelling background? Because
not really. I mean,
I agree with you. I think like point and click adventure games, like the fact that there's like a lack of action, and I don't mean that in like a derogatory way. I just mean like, that's sort of like the medium. You're not shooting and killing and jumping and stuff like that. It's like the writing and the script and the performances and the narrative, like that's like everything, that's, and the art, like that's everything you're leaning on. So it is weird how I agree with what you were just saying, how like I feel like point and click adventures, people are rarely like, man, that was like the best story or whatever. People just like talk about the insult sword fighting or whatever,
right?
And
but then also you have stuff like the Telltale stuff, right? Like The Walking Dead,
right?
The Walking Dead had a it was praised for its story and how intense it was and stuff, and it deviated from the standard point and click formula. It was the template for what Telltale then went on to do with like all of its choice-based games. But even season 1 of The Walking Dead did have some minor inventory stuff, even if it was just like find axe and then use axe on zombie or whatever. But like there was some elements of that still, so that showed that you could do it. And of course people thought it was too easy because again it was logical. It wasn't like you weren't like doing ridiculous things. I think that's if I can go on another tangent,
sure,
I think that's another just like interesting thing about inventory puzzles in adventure games, because you tell people inventory puzzles in adventure games, and I think the thing that they automatically assume is that it's going to be like combine weird objects to make tool.
Yeah.
And that's only one of the possible like things you can do with inventory, right? Like you know, you can find something that's broken and you can repair it like in a logical way, or you can find something that like needs fuel or power or something, and like you can do a combination like that where it's literally just like, you know, put batteries in radio,
Yeah.
but the batteries are not charged, so you have to find a way to charge the batteries or something like that. Like it doesn't always have to be absurd combination of objects to make stupid tool, right?
Right.
But that seems to be the thing that people
Yeah.
default to or automatically assume is going to be the thing. So
I'm just gonna say the thought, which is that like, does it maybe have to do with the agency that's afforded players in those early adventure games? Like, you can do whatever you want, and like, what if you do something silly? Hee hee. And it's like you kind of want to allow for that flexibility while still maintaining like a specific tonal goal, right? Like,
oh sure. I mean, well, what you saying that just immediately makes me think like, you know, like RPGs like Fallout, right?
sure,
It's like,
yeah.
here's the main quest. You have to find your dad. And then it's like, I'm going to go do this side quest where I like kill a bunch of rats in you know, clown costumes or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you go and do all the other stuff. But like, no, I agree. Like it's the agency of the player has a lot to do with it, I think. But also, yeah, I don't know. There's other things I want to talk about, but I don't even know if we've even touched upon them.
What's on your mind?
I'm just gonna throw those two random things out there right now.
Go for it.
Okay.
Another thing of design which I wanted to talk about with regards to like the tone is that I also feel like there's a lot of adventure game characters are psychopaths. Let's be honest. Like a lot of adventure game puzzles involve you doing really horrible things to people to get ahead. You see it in stuff like Monkey Island 2, where like Guybrush Threepwood puts a live rat in a cooked soup to get him fired, or like Mystery of the Druids. If you don't know about Mystery of the Druids, look it up. There is
the cover art, right?
But
the guy
you're like
yelling.
You're a police officer and you can't make a phone call, so you like poison a homeless man to steal his change to make a phone call.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
Relax.
I know.
It's bad.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of puzzles in a lot of adventure games that involve your character doing a lot of really weird things. And I think that is another thing of adventure game design that people maybe latch onto. Like in Runaway 2, you have to spray pheromones on a guy so that he is shall we say assaulted by a polar bear so you can get like some item off of him you need. So one thing that I've been very conscious of, and this leads back to Rosewater, is that I mentioned that Harley is a former boxer.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I thought would be fun would be to have certain puzzles where there's like a logical solution and a more violent solution.
Mhm.
So like you see it in the demo, like there's a bit where you have to get into a theater and there's an annoying kid who's like, oh, I'll let you in if you do this for me.
Yeah.
And you can do that for him, or you can just be like, no thanks, and knock him out. And obviously that changes things too. But like, I think it's important that when you're establishing your main character, you figure out how they would approach problems. Like a classic example, again, talking about Tim Schafer, when Day of the Tentacle came out and Full Throttle came out, Full Throttle like stars a big biker guy. And he was talking about the difference in approaches with like one of the characters in Day of the Tentacle, Bernard, who's like a classic stereotypical nerd.
Yeah.
And Ben, who is the main character of Full Throttle. He says, okay, they're both in front of a locked door and they have a sandwich. How would they get through the door? He's like, well, Bernard would like take apart the sandwich. Like he'd slide the bread under the door. He'd notice that the key was in the lock. He'd like push the key through with the thing. And then and he's like, Ben would eat the sandwich and kick the door down. So that always stuck in my mind because it's great. It's like, okay, design your puzzles for your character. One of my biggest regrets. Yeah. One of my biggest regrets in Shardlight is that the main character in that game is named Amy, and she's a mechanic. And I failed in the puzzle design there because I'm not a mechanically minded person, and I should have had more puzzles that involved her like mechanically fixing things. Right?
Yeah.
Like there's a puzzle in that game where you have to fix somebody's record player. and like you get a pie plate and like a needle from somewhere. It's like, what? No, that's not how a mechanic would fix a record player.
It sounds more like an adventure game puzzle than a mechanic doing something.
Exactly. So that's one of the things that I've taken with me as a lesson. And you know, when I design now, I'm like, is this too adventure gamey? That's like one of my mantras. Because as long as it makes sense for the character to do, then that's fine. Like, you know, with a Golden Wake, there was some persuasion puzzles because, like, as a real estate agent, you're trying to convince people that don't want to buy things to buy things. So, like, there's greater opportunity there for, like, to do interesting things with like, persuasion and dialogue and things like that. So that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to talk about was I forgot, actually.
Beautiful.
No problem.
Beautiful. That's totally...
It exited my mind.
We love that.
There's other shit going on. I want to ask before we wrap up here.
Yes.
So you're talking about, because it seems evident that like you're thinking about all these different aspects of production. Like I get the sense that you're something of a solo developer on these games for Grundislav. Would you agree with that? Or
pretty much.
You have collaborators.
I have a composer that I work with.
Okay.
That's mostly it. And my partner, who on Lamplight City was my script editor, and on this game was also my script editor, but she also did additional writing. So
nice.
that was nice to delegate. She like wrote all the journal entries, which are really great, very literary, and like, you know, cleaned up the dialogue and helped me with some of the design and stuff. But yeah, mostly it's mostly me doing everything, which is why Rosewater has taken me 6 years.
Well, exactly. It's given that it's like so many different creative choices that you're making. My question for you is, how do you collect and organize your workload? Like, how do you stay on top of how many lines of dialogue are in Rosewater? I think it was like 8,000 for Lamplight, right? So like
Rosewater has about 15,600 and something lines of dialogue.
Good luck.
A lot of action.
So how do you collect and organize your workload?
You mean like my process in general?
Yeah. Like I mean, it's less about like what are the tools. Like, do you use a spreadsheet? And it's more like how do you No,
I hate spreadsheets.
Okay.
I mean, I'll use them. I hate creating them.
Sure.
No, I mean, my process is basically like in the design phase, I write everything down on a notepad. So I'm old school. I just write down all my ideas. And, you know, I'll write out like the world, I'll write out the characters, I'll write stuff like that out. And then I just kind of start building the game. And I think about like where the story is, where the story beats are, like where the opportunity for puzzles are. I start thinking about like the complexity of the puzzles, and I kind of just jump around. Because one of the things that I find motivates me is the fact that I do have the luxury to be able to switch disciplines. So like if I start building the game and I spend like 2 weeks coding it, putting it together with just like sketches that I've done, you know, I'll get sick of coding, and then I'll be like, okay, I feel pretty strongly about this part. Let's touch up, like, let's make the background final, like the first background final. And then I'll paint the background, right? Or I'll like do the character or something, and I'll do the art for a while, and then seeing it all come together and look final will give me that jolt of motivation so I can do something for a while, and then if I get sick of it, I do something else, and then I jump around and do that and try my best to do that. Now in the current phase where I'm at, which is like the game's fully playable, and I'm just kind of like wrangling, if you'll pardon the pun, wrangling together all the assets.
Yeehaw!
Yeehaw! My partner is also very kindly serving as my producer, and she has put together a lovely spreadsheet of all of the outstanding tasks and giving me sprints to do. And so I have a little list where I'm checking things off as I go and feeling a sense of accomplishment, and not just like I'm spinning my wheels.
Okay.
So little by little, I'm chipping away at all of the stuff that's left to do and polishing and stuff. And I just keep doing that until I get to a point where I'm like, okay, it's fine. Let's get it out there, which hopefully will be sooner rather than later.
Love it.
I don't know if we're gonna press you for a.
No, we're not gonna ask for a date. Yeah.
When's it? When?
When it's done.
When it's done, it's done. But people should know, because I don't think we even said it at the top, that the demo's out there. The demo is free and playable, and everyone should check it out. And it's great. It's cool. And
thank you.
As the demo was wrapping up, like one of the notes I wrote was, what did I write?
Make it better.
I said you can make that joke. The note I wrote though genuinely was, oh shoot, I was ready to play more.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Because it's always leave them wanting more.
Yeah, because it's like I'm not gonna say what the ending of the demo is, but it's like the game is very propulsive. Like there is like a very direct.
Now.
Yeah,
I'm curious.
Which
you both played the demo, right?
Yeah.
How did you each get into the theater?
Into the theater?
Yeah. How did you deal with the kid outside the theater? You punched him.
Yeah,
punched him.
I did.
Yeah. All right, you punched him. What did you do, Sean?
I got the watch for him.
Okay. Did you break in or did you pick the lock to get in?
I smashed I found a tile.
Okay.
Because I noticed on the door.
So you got caught on your way out.
Yeah, there was the one-eyed person, and I had to sort of be I didn't know anyone was living here. See ya.
Okay. Second question: when the guy got thrown out the window, what did you guys do?
I ignored and walked right in.
Oh my gosh!
Okay,
you're bad.
Am I evil?
Yeah,
you're
all right,
bad.
All right. Cool,
I'm just role playing.
All right, no, that's great.
I went to the doctor. I got a doctor. A guy fell out a window.
All right. Well,
not my business.
Slight spoilers here.
Okay.
That guy who fell out your window and that lady who you got the watch from, they're both your companions, and they'll remember what you did.
Whoa!
And so your relationship with them will be affected by the actions that you took.
Awesome.
So also, so that presumably means that Sean, you got the Barbarol scene.
Barbarol scene? What's Barbarol?
Bar brawl, sorry.
Oh, the bar brawl. Yeah.
Like the fight, the fisticuffs in the bar.
And I could riff on that because like as I was doing that, I was like, wow, this is like a super active puzzle situation.
Yeah,
sorry,
that
continue.
was a lot of fun.
Continue.
Well, I mentioned in our correspondence that the demo was a little outdated. That was one of the changes we made because originally if you punched your way into the theater, you didn't get that bar room fight scene.
Okay.
Oh.
And now we changed it so that you do, because it seemed a little strange because it was kind of like if you punch the kid, you get taken to jail, and then Jake comes in and bails you out.
Whoa.
And she's like, oh, I want to interview you. And he's like, yeah, I got a proposition for you. And in thinking over it, we were like, well, that's kind of weirdly knowing her, because in the other path, it's like he sees her fight in the bar brawl scene and he's like, oh, yeah. You can handle yourself. So now we have it so that he comes to bail you out, and then you do the interview, and then you get the bar scene. So that was another little in-production change that we did, which has not been updated in the demo, but now in the full bar room scene regardless. But yeah.
So it's like, listen, there's a million. I think we could talk easily for another hour.
The reason,
because it's all.
The reason that I asked you this is because you just demonstrated the thing that I really hope happens with Rosewater, which is that two people will play it and they'll have two completely different experiences, because there is a lot of benching. I didn't even touch on that. Like there is a lot, and this is another reason it's taken 6 years. Like there's as I mentioned, the relationships with the companions matter. So like in the second act, there are certain scenes that are specific to the companions, like a little quest scene will happen with them, but there's two for each companion. There's one for high relationship and one for low relationship. So like your path through the second act will potentially be completely different than someone else's. So like I really
love that.
I hope that and then people will realize that there's like replay value. So
yeah, no, I mean, listen, I think we could talk for hours longer. On the different decision trees and the different routes, and just there's so much other stuff that we have in our notes, but it's endless. So we got to end it somewhere. I just want to say,
it's fine.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for obviously for coming on and chatting and hanging. And where should people check out maybe Rosewater, but also your past games and your social media or whatever? Plug whatever you need to plug.
So I guess the easiest way to find all of my stuff is to just go to my website, which is grundislav.games. That's GRUNDISLAV.games. You'll find links to all my games and where you can acquire them, and links to all of my social media and my Twitch and all of that stuff. Twitch, I have a YouTube channel, I have Twitter, I have Blue Sky, I have pretty much everything. I'm pretty easy to find.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Just Google.
That's perfect.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. And we're looking forward to the future of Rosewater. No
Thank
time
you.
pressure at all.
Thank you.
thanks for coming on. I'm
me.
super excited to. Yeah, it was amazing.
For sure.
I appreciate it.